Welcome to the Foreword podcast. I'm Casey.
And I'm Pastor Ethan. Here we have real Christ-centered conversations that go beyond our regular scheduled services.
From lighthearted fun to the burdens of everyday life, we're diving into what matters most together.
So let's get into it.
This is the Foreword podcast.
This is the Foreword podcast. You heard it from me first, and now you've heard it from me again. I'm Pastor Ethan, as always,
I'm Casey.
With Casey.
As always.
If you were listening to the last podcast, I am ignoring all of the emails about...
The phones have been ringing off the hook. You should see the switchboard back there. They're like, Foreword podcast.
Yeah, and then it's all, I'd like to replace Casey, and it's like, no, we're, as much as the Lord said no. So
everyone else is simply booked up.
Listen, here's what I'll say. I'll take you better more than Nate. Like, let's just be honest.
Love that.
Hilgen Camp is no, I'm just kidding. That's a reference to the Becoming Something podcast. If you listen to that, it's
Kathy
and Nate are on there, and they
duke it out a lot.
yeah. It makes the podcast interesting.
Yeah. They're so mean to Kathy.
Yeah,
they're so mean to Kathy.
Poor girl. That's a deep cut for people that actually listen to that. But if you were listening to our last podcast, we were, of course, talking about Daniel 3 and talking about trials and tribulations. And Casey was talking about loneliness and how he's had to trust God in times that he's lonely, in times when what we have to understand as Christians is just because God has said no, you know, doesn't mean that he's not worthy of being served.
Right.
Doesn't mean he's not worthy of being praised. Just because he is withholding something from us. And sometimes that's the way that it feels. It's like, why are you withholding something?
What have I done wrong?
Yeah, what have I done? Yeah, and I think that's sometimes the case. It's like, what have I done to call in? What's interesting about that is we've been going through, at Greenwood, the book of Job. Oh. And the whole book is Job trying to figure out, like, what have I done to deserve all of the things that... And of course, that's a pretty narrow summary, but that's what it comes down to is like, why does God feel like he's my enemy when I love God? Yeah. I want God in my life. I've been serving him.
Talk about a life of trial. Job.
Yeah.
Man, how that's a talk about deep cut.
Yeah, and he talks and he's got these friends that are supposed to be quote unquote friends, and they just beat him up with their words. And anyway, and I just mentioned, hey, I think I've got some things on loneliness that we should just probably do another podcast, and we were going to do another podcast after Daniel 3 anyway, and so we decided to do a forward, and the topic is going to be on loneliness.
Yeah,
so
pertinent to so many people.
Absolutely.
So many people suffer from loneliness, whether it's like a chronic loneliness or whether it's just in a season of loneliness, which we all know how I feel about when we talk about seasons.
It's just not a better word.
There's not a better word for it, but
stage.
It's like season. It's like everybody always says, I'm in the season. I'm in the season.
Yeah.
I'm in the season. I'm
like, over
the seasons.
It's a tired word when it comes to Christianese.
Yeah, but it is what it is, you know? It is a season.
Yeah, and it can
be a season.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's a fleeting thing, but anyway.
And the Bible talks about it in that manner, like things come and go, and there's a season for this and a season for that. And
so I guess I shouldn't dislike seasons so much, since it talks about this, the word itself talks about seasons, but again, it's like sort of the helpful people. When people want to be helpful, they'll tell you, well, you're just in a season. And sometimes that's all you get from it.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the rub comes in a little bit.
Yeah. It's it feels surface level just to automatically throw it into the category of a season when it's like, well, you just don't understand the situation.
Yeah, this has been a long season. This hasn't been.
This is not a season.
This is my life.
Yeah.
My entire existence.
My life told by seasons.
Anyway. So loneliness, I think people struggle from loneliness for different reasons. I think maybe they don't have friends, or they feel like they don't have friends.
Yeah.
I think maybe they don't have siblings. That's sometimes what people struggle for loneliness. Maybe they don't have if they're a man, they don't have a wife. If they're a woman, they don't have a husband. Maybe they've lost their wife or their husband. I think the topic of loneliness can be so. And we just talked last podcast about even, children are not like lesser than people. They're just people in a different stage of life than an adult is. Children can suffer from loneliness for multiple reasons. Adults can suffer from loneliness for multiple reasons. It's a topic that affects all groups of people
across the board,
regardless of age. Yeah, across the board. Because my mind immediately goes to the woman in her 80s or whatever that has lost her husband, or vice versa, where, they've known this person for X amount of years and that's all they've known.
Yeah.
Or they had a good group of friends and they started to pass away and now they're the only one left, or whatever it may be. And then I also think about the people that, aren't married and want to be married. They're looking to start that portion of their life. It's interesting that to bookend both of those, loneliness bookends, wanting to love somebody and then losing somebody. It's interesting part of life. And you would say that it really comes from love. Like if you're not lonely after someone you love passes, then, maybe you didn't love them. I don't know.
Yeah.
And the desire to love someone can also breed this loneliness. So, like I said, it's an interesting thing that it's bookended by love.
That's true. Yes.
Same way with friends, or if you have a friend move away, or you're a child and you don't have a sibling, or you don't have friends, or
and you
you're
see that
an
from
adult
other people.
and you don't have friends or siblings, or what'd you say?
And so you see that though in other people, and so I think that causes it. Maybe you're not so self-aware that you realize you're lonely sometimes, until you see what other people have. And I don't mean that in a sense of jealousy. I think a lot of times when we see, like, if you desire something that somebody else has, I think that automatically gets lumped into jealousy sometimes. But and maybe I'm wrong here, so you can tell me I'm wrong.
Okay.
But in my opinion, I think that a lot of times jealousy has a negative connotation of being like a bitterness, or I don't want you to have that thing because I want that thing that you have. And when I think of jealousy, that's what I think of. But
Absolutely.
I think a better term would be more like comparison, I guess, where it's like, oh, I'm aware now that there's other options, and so I start to look inward to myself more and realize, like, oh, I do feel lonely, and I don't have these things that these other people seem to have, and that can kind of lead you. It can lead to jealousy, like bitter. But I don't know that that's across the board always the case. I think sometimes it's just. It's just more in front of your face, like almost smacking you in the face with it, when you could have sort of not paid that much attention to it, if that makes sense.
I think loneliness doesn't have to lead to jealousy. I think what you're talking about is you can still be happy for somebody and love the life that they have.
Yeah.
And I think the word maybe that I think about is, and feel like it's commendable to live that type of life and want that for yourself. I wouldn't say that's covetous or jealousy or anything like that. The desire to want what they have and be mad about it, that's jealousy.
The jealousy.
And I think you put that part well. The flip side of that would be to say that's such an admirable thing that I hope that they enjoy their marriage. I hope they enjoy their children. I hope they enjoy their life. I would also like to have that life, and have those blessings that the Lord provides.
And the reason I bring that up is only because I've heard that said before by some people when you say I desire this thing. And I'm not just talking about marriage. Like, certainly, yes, that is the case with marriage or anything else, like friendship, siblings. It's like you desire to have these things, and I've heard other people say before, like, well, don't be jealous of them. Like, you have a great life. Don't be jealous of them. And it's like, well, I'm not jealous of that person for them having the things that they, desired, or that the Lord has blessed them with. But that doesn't mean that you don't desire those things and kind of sink back into yourself and say, man, I wish I had that for myself. Man, I wish I had that.
Yeah.
And I don't. And I think that's where the jealousy comes in. It's just from other people kind of casting that on you a little bit, like
absolutely,
like you are jealous.
I also think like a root of one of the roots of loneliness doesn't necessarily have to come from seeing something that somebody else has.
Oh yeah.
You can just be lonely because you feel the lack of something that you desire. Like it doesn't have to be like, I'm looking at this person's life and thinking, oh, I want that. Or I'm looking at that person's life and thinking like, why hasn't God blessed me with that? It can just be like you feel a sense of lack. And sometimes that can be, I think there's really two avenues to look at loneliness. And I think, because we're not going to be able to cover everything, we can't even personally speak to the idea of, losing a spouse or the idea of losing a lifelong friend or our kids not visiting us. We can recognize and kind of group those things in with as we go along. But the things that cause loneliness is it's a sense of lack of something, right? That's what I think about loneliness. I don't know what the actual definition of, but to me, when I think about loneliness, you feel like you're in lack.
Yeah.
Whether it be companionship, whatever it is. And you can sense that without necessarily knowing somebody that has something that you desire.
Yeah.
Right. And I think really the two ways to look at this, or the two ways I think that we should take it is, one is on you, and another part of it is on the people around you. So do you feel lonely because people make you feel that way? Or do you feel lonely because you feel a lack of something? Because I'll be honest with you, part of this is on, like, if you have friends, like part of this is on your friends. When I remember feeling like when all my friends started getting married, all my friends started having children, it's like they just forget that you exist.
That's a hard place to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, you do get, and it's not always intentional. I mean, it's generally not intentional.
No.
But,
I
don't mean that to say.
They are so busy, and and that's understandable.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's like, from the perspective of the married couple, it's like, well, surely they don't want to come hang out with us on a Tuesday night and eat pizza while my kids are. It's like, actually, I do. Yeah. Like, I would be fine with just coming over. Like, I don't care your situation. And I think the root of the problem is the way that each side views what the other one will want.
And when I say intentional, I mean, sometimes I do mean it is intentional. And I'm not saying that about your friends. But I've heard people, and I've seen from other people say, like, well, again, season, we were friends during the season, and we're still friends, but we've moved on. Like, we're married, we're hanging out with our married friends now, and our kids are playing. So, like, we just have sort of drifted because we don't have as much in common anymore. Because you can do what you want now because you're single and you don't have you're single, so you don't have any obligations.
Enjoy it.
You must not have anything to do because you're single.
Yeah.
But we're married now, and so I got to be with my spouse 24/7. I've got to have my kids 24/7, and I go to work and I come home, and we're just not the same as you anymore. And so so sometimes it is intentional. We've intentionally untethered. Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's not the case. It's just because they're busy. But it does happen where it is intentional.
It does happen, and the thoughtfulness of a person, again, wherever they realize it or not, I'm not going to put the intentions of people, is sometimes it's their thought process is they don't want to hang out with us. We're a boring old couple, a boring married couple now. Yeah. And it's like, actually, I would have liked to join you in this. I don't mind to be the third wheel. I don't mind to do this. I don't mind to do that. But the perspective is that you apply, the married couple would apply what they think the other person is thinking to their life without actually knowing.
Yeah.
Some people know they don't want to come hang out with you because now you're married. And that's on them to go and, like you said, if that season no longer exists where you're friends with the people and they got married and they moved on, you got to move on too.
Yeah.
Like, so part of it's on them. Again, part of it's on you. That's why I say I think there's two ways to look at this.
Yeah, because for myself, there's a lot of times when I'm like, I just want to have somebody around. Like, I don't even need to be talking to them. Like, I just don't want to be by myself, you know?
Yeah.
And we talked on the last podcast that I like to go out and go hiking, and that's a good time with the Lord. And but I also just like to go hike. It's something I enjoy doing. So it's kind of a double-edged thing. I get my alone time with the Lord, but I also like to hike. But I also like to hike with other people, you know? But again, it's sort of, sometimes I just want someone else around. I don't need to be having a 40-minute conversation on XYZ. I just want to have another human being in the room with me.
Yeah.
You know? So again, that's kind of that third wheeling. Yeah, you can't just assume that just because that they're by themselves that, they don't want to hang out.
I can't think of off the top of my head, and probably could have done more research on this, but we decided to take on this podcast off of a whim from the previous podcast. I'm sure there's examples of this, but one thing I do want to mention is like a lot of, I think this podcast, the way I'm already feeling like it's going to go is just like personal experience, how we're dealing with things now versus, and now that we're tethered to Christ and like really actively pursuing a relationship with Him, the way that we've responded to these things. Because like some podcasts, obviously we have a ton of scripture, a ton of biblical examples. We've got a few, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
This is still a Christian podcast, obviously. So I don't want this just to be like a self-help about loneliness that you could get anywhere else, because this is from the view of two guys that are Christian, having lived lives as Christians.
Our view, not the view.
Yeah, exactly. And how we feel like these things need to be dealt with based off the wisdom that we have given to us by the Holy Spirit.
Lived experience.
Though we may not have like a big biblical example here, where we're coming from is certainly like inspired by what we feel like the Holy Spirit has led us to. So I want to make that caveat in the idea that we might talk a lot from personal experience, but no, it's lived experience with having a relationship with God. Yeah. And how God shaped us over time. Not, oh, well, here's some ideas about loneliness. Here's a 8-step process.
This isn't a therapy session.
No,
this is literally like what we've endured or encountered and how God got us through it.
Yeah. I think, to start off with, like I said, loneliness is across a spectrum of people, from when you could start to feel lonely all the way to, until you take your last breath. You can unfortunately, people die lonely, and that's an unfortunate thing. But what I think we can promise you is you don't have to be lonely. This is where the Bible certainly comes in, is you don't have to be lonely. You can feel lonely, and you don't have to stay there. That's where the Holy Spirit comes in. That's where your relationship with God comes in. That's where we talk about this, and I bring up this verse a lot. When Christ, who is your life, when you remember Christ is your life,
not part of it,
not part of your life. Like He should be at the helm, right? Yeah, taking the wheel, and when you remember that, it can cut down a lot of these things that we struggle with. One of them being loneliness. And I do say loneliness is a struggle, because your flesh wants to drag you into it. And your spirit says, that's not who we are in Christ. Yeah. Because we have plenty of brothers and sisters in Christ. We have the Holy Spirit. We have God the Father. We have God the Son. We have, and realistically, we look around and we don't allow loneliness to blind us. Many people have family. They have friends. They have church family. There's all these things, and I don't want this to be like, well, think of all the things that you're thankful for, and it will just get rid of your loneliness.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's what some people's answers are.
However, that those thought process can drag you out of this, because it's like, you know what? No. The devil wants people to be lonely because he wants to isolate them.
That's the biggest thing, is the isolation.
The isolation that comes from loneliness is where the devil wants you to be, because if he can convince you to retract, to pull away, because that's the problem. You have two options when you feel lonely. Either you can allow the Holy Spirit to help you overcome that loneliness. You can get up off your rear and go do something. Some of this is not so spiritual.
Yeah.
Some of it is just
get out of bed.
Don't spend a bunch of time sitting somewhere by yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what really sparked this conversation. And I'll loop back around to the isolation. Actually, let me start with the isolation thing. So when you feel lonely, what the devil will use that for is to say, you know what? Nobody cares about you. Nobody loves you. That's pretty clear. And he wants you to retract in on yourself. And once he gets you isolated, then he can whisper all the things he wants to whisper. And because you're vulnerable, because you're isolated, then he can get you to do, unfortunately, I think the most unfortunate thing is suicide, right?
Yeah.
That's like where this leads sometimes.
Yeah.
Because loneliness and depression
Yeah.
go hand in hand, right? And so
You throw in a little anxiety in there with that.
absolutely.
And then you've got a recipe for disaster.
Absolutely. And so the worst case scenario happens because the devil has isolated a person. And that's where this loneliness can lead. And that's a serious thing. It can also lead you, coming up from that, it can also just lead you to being unproductive. It can lead you to not making new friends. It can lead you to not putting yourself out there. It can one of the worst things that can happen is that your relationship with God struggles because you forget him in all of this, and you just feel helpless.
Yeah.
Right?
Or you
Sometimes
find-
loneliness leads to helplessness.
Or sometimes you find, when you stray away from the faith in that way, you find other friends that do kind of pick you up, but they are the wrong kind of friends.
Yeah.
And so they pull you away. So what feels like, I'm not really lonely anymore because these people have taken me in, but they're not the people you should be around. And you were vulnerable to that. When in a non-lonely state, you would have recognized that probably.
Yeah. That's the thing. In your right mind, and there's so many things like that. Like, in your right mind, you would absolutely say, well, I'm not going to just hang out with anybody. That's not curing anything.
Yeah.
Problem is that sometimes that's what people do. They feel lonely, so they just hang out with anybody. And it's people that are leading them down the wrong paths, or people they don't have any business hanging around with. But, well, at least I'm not home alone. At least I'm not alone any longer. But you know as well as I do, you can feel alone and be with people.
Yes.
Because it's not necessarily the presence of, I talked about the idea of feeling lonely as feeling the lack of something. I didn't say a person.
Yeah.
Because it's not necessarily a person. Though sometimes you're lonely because you don't have a person or you're not around a person. Sometimes you're lonely because like I said, you can be around people and still not be feeling loved by them.
Yeah.
Still not be feeling like I remember sitting with a group of friends one time, and they're all talking about football or whatever, and I'm just like, I remember feeling desperately lonely because it was all these dead-end conversations that didn't matter to me whatsoever.
Yeah.
So to me, it felt like there was no substance to those conversations, and I was just like, I would rather be at home by myself right now because that feels as productive as being here right now. I think that's the difficult thing about loneliness is it's not like sometimes you just can't predict that it's going to happen. You're like.
You go to a movie theater and you go by yourself because that's what you're used to doing.
Yeah.
You see all the couples sitting there and they're not sitting like, look at me. I've got my girlfriend or my wife or my husband or boyfriend or whatever. They're not making a show of it. They just came in to see a movie and have a good time. And you're sitting there thinking like, everyone in here has somebody and I have No one.
Yeah.
You know.
This kind of is this idea is what kind of sparked me to say, you know, we should do a podcast about this was the physical aspect of it. That really, because what you were talking about was until you started going and doing things and saying, you know what, I'm not going to, just because I don't have, you know, a friend to do this with or a wife to do this with or a girlfriend to do this with, doesn't mean I can't go do it, right?
Right.
To me, part of the physical aspect, and it's probably a bit spiritual as well, is you can choose to sit there in loneliness, or you can go do the thing that you desire to do and just do it alone.
Yeah.
Like, until I realized that I could go to Texas Roadhouse alone. I could go to the movies alone. I could, you know, and I would have friends that were in relationships be like, well, what'd you do this weekend? And I'd be like, well, you know, at Applebee's. And, oh, who'd you go with? Just me. And they're like, oh, okay.
People make you feel bad about
And
that.
yeah, it's like you go. Oh, I can never do that.
I've heard that so many times.
Weird.
Dude. People say that all the time to me. Like,
Yeah.
you went to Olive Garden by yourself?
Yeah.
You crazy?
It's like,
I'm like, well,
yeah.
I wanted chicken Alfredo.
Who am I waiting for?
Yeah.
You know, that's the thought in my mind is like, who's showing up to go with me if I don't go?
Yeah.
You know?
You didn't ask.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly.
I saw that you went wherever and you didn't ask me, so.
So part of the physical nature is like, if you have a desire to do something and you're letting the idea of not having a companion be the thing that keeps you from doing it, you just need to mature a little bit.
Yeah.
Because once you start doing those things alone, it's like going to the movies is actually better alone, I think. Unless it's like a love story and, you know, the person that you're with is who you love or whatever. Sometimes it can be better because if you pick the movie and you have somebody with you and they're disappointed, then it's like, well, the people pleaser in me comes out and I go, man, I'm sorry that this person wasted their money. You know, I picked a bad film. If I go and it's terrible, I've been known to leave halfway through.
Yeah. You're like, I don't care.
Who cares? I'm going to get ice cream because I decided that that's what I'm going to do. Or if it's really good, then I'm like, this is awesome, you know? Or if it's a difficult movie to understand, you don't have the person beside you going, why did he say that? Why?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Why is she doing that? I was like, did you not have your eyes open? You know, sometimes it's like, how about you watch the movie so I don't have to watch it for both of us?
Yeah.
You know? And so sometimes it can be desirable to just be like, you know what? I'm going to go and I'm going to watch this movie. I'll always go to the movies with my wife. Like, don't hopefully she's not
don't take
listening
this
to
the
this
wrong
going,
way.
fine, you can go to the movies. No, she would never do that. But
Yeah.
so sometimes it's about you physically moving from the place that you're at and going and just doing the thing that you have the desire to do. And there are so many things you can do alone that everybody looks at as you have to have a friend or you have to have a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend or whatever to do this. No, you don't.
You don't.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head you can't do alone. Just to be completely honest with you, like you know,
I think it's where people make you feel bad about yourself for saying that, and I remember one time where they didn't make me feel bad about myself. Well, probably the only time that I remember actually going somewhere and somebody didn't make me feel like garbage for being there by myself was when I worked at the IGA. A lot of times I would go in at 1:00, and it was kind of a weird time. Glory Days would open at 11:00 here in town.
Okay.
And Ashley, her parents own the restaurant. She would be serving in the morning, like during the lunch hour. She'd be there, and so I would come in. I'd be the first one in. And I'd sit down by myself, and she knew my order. She knew I wanted a sweet tea and a piece of homemade sugar cream pie, right? But she told me one day, she's like, I think it's so great that you come in here by yourself. She wasn't married at the time. She's married now, and it's great for her. And she's such a kind person. But she would tell me, she said, I love to do things by myself. And people tell me all the time that I'm crazy. And she's like, but I go to the movies. I take myself to eat. I do all this stuff. And she's like, I love it. And I love that you're comfortable doing that. Yeah. And I did that for quite a while. And then once I got a different job and I was going to Terre Haute and I didn't know the people quite as well, then I did start to kind of fall back away from feeling comfortable and doing those things. That's why when I got it back, it felt like such a, like, why have I not been doing this? I used to do this all the time. Like, what happened? But again, it's like isolation. You fall back into it.
Yeah. Yeah, from an adult standpoint, it's like if you have the desire to do something, the only thing stopping you is the fact that you feel like it's going to be awkward, which is, from a spiritual sense, it may be something that's way more healthy for you to do than just getting off your rear end and going is, from a spiritual sense, probably far better. Because if you sit and stew on things, as well as I do, that's when the devil can have a heyday with you. Yeah. And it's like, no, I'm just going to get up and go do the thing.
Yeah.
And
listen, I'm going to be awkward whether I'm by myself or I'm with somebody. Yeah. So you might as well just embrace the awkward and just do it.
Yeah. I went on Valentine's Day to Applebee or to TGI Fridays one time, and then went and watched the movie Valentine's Day. It was the Taylor Lautner, Taylor Swift. I can't remember who else is in that movie. So I sat down at the table. Of course, it's Valentine's Day, and I'm by myself, and the girl sits down across from me, and she puts her hands on the table. I've probably told you this story before, like
poor you,
poor you. She's like, what can I get you to drink? And I'm like, I'll have a Dr. Pepper. Like, I'm not dying. I just am alone on Valentine's Day.
Yeah,
and I think that day was one of the things that really solidified for me. It was like, I don't have to be miserable because I'm alone,
Yeah.
I don't have to let loneliness take over me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it has in the past, for sure. Mm-hmm. Loneliness has been a big problem in my life.
Yeah.
But it's like the power that it has over you to like just cause you to stay stuck. Mm-hmm. Or to not make any decisions, or to be cynical and just say, you know what? I don't, nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. Mm-hmm. I might as well just go eat worms.
Yeah.
That's what my mom, that's a little saying my mom used to say. Yeah. Nobody likes me. Everybody hates me. As well. But the adult version of that is like, nobody even cares about me. I could just, I could get in a wreck right now and die. Nobody cares. I could go. I could move away. Nobody would miss me, And like I said, that spirals on people.
Mm-hmm. It does.
And I think that's the difficulty about loneliness is if you don't get out of it, it can take you over. The physical aspect is to not stay in one place. Like you said, don't lay in bed.
Yeah.
Don't sit in the dark. And you go, but it's comforting. No, it's not. You're not comforting yourself to just sit and do nothing and think about it.
For me, a lot of times it was the church that got me through. And I know that this is going to sound like well, of course he's going to say that. He's a Christian. He's on the Christian podcast for the church. And so he's going to talk about the church. But in a lot of ways, but I don't always mean necessarily the people of the church. 9 times out of 10, yes, it was. But I needed busyness because when I graduated high school, I had a couple close friends, and as they do, they go other places. And the hardest was I had a friend that moved to Michigan, and then basically, we were good friends, like really good friends, and basically was ghosted. And then they got married, and I didn't know about it, and it bothered me. And then, going through college, I started taking online classes because I wanted to keep working. And so I was working a lot of hours. And it just got to a point where I realized I had isolated myself because I put the pressure on all the working and the doing. And one of the best things that happened, one of the hardest choices I ever had to make was leaving one job for the next. And I really felt like God had called me to do that. And when I did that, I gained some really great friends at work that were adults, like they were older than me. And so instead, I went from this transition of people that were the same age as me that didn't really care what I was doing. Clearly, I got ghosted by my best friend and didn't hear from him ever again. So it makes you now think, well, how good of a friend were they? Yeah. But once you have these older adult friends that kind of speak life into you, then you start to have a different perspective. But, as far as the church goes, it kept me busy. And so I didn't have like the idle hands, and it helped me. I would do things crazy. Like I remember when I worked at the IGA, I would work until 9:00 at night and then I would come in at 9:30 to the church when it was all by myself, and I would paint. So I literally painted 3/4 of the church over the course of a week or two, just room by room, because it needed done, and I didn't have the time in the day to do it, and I would have sat at home and felt sorry for myself and felt bad for myself, and so I literally would just go in, and people were like, "How do you do that?" I'm like, "Because I'm lonely."
Yeah,
but
I didn't have anything.
They didn't have anything to do, but it was random stuff like that I did all the time, and I look back on that now, and it was a busyness, but it helped pull me out of a lot of other things that I could have gotten myself into, because also I think, and this is probably too much for this podcast because this would go down a rabbit hole, but you turn to other things when you're lonely to ease that pain.
Yeah.
So you can turn to drugs. You can turn to pornography. You can turn to lust. You can turn to, alcohol. You can turn to any number of things. And again, when you're isolated, that is when the enemy tries to grab a hold of you.
And you can turn to people, like we talked about hanging out, but people turn this into sexual, just having a relationship with somebody like that. I don't remember. Back in the day, they probably had a term for it or whatever, but like friends with benefits, for example, like you only call this person when you're feeling lonely and you
just want to hook up.
And exactly, when you just want to hook up, and it's like, well, that's not healthy at all. We know that. Mm-hmm. We know that that's also not biblical, of course. But that's what happens to people.
And again, when you were in your right mind, you would have said, "I'm not doing that."
Exactly, when you're in your right mind. But being lonely takes you out of that. Yeah. When you were talking, it reminded me of this verse, 1 Thessalonians chapter 4. It says in verse 11, and aspire to live quietly and mind your own affairs and work with your hands as we instructed you. Mm-hmm. I like that verse because it's like, be busy doing the right things. Mm-hmm. And I think that, like you said, that saying that the idle hands are the devil's work, like that's a true thing. It's not a scripture that I know of. Maybe there is something in there that would yield itself to the reason why people say that. But it really is like when you get isolated, that's when the devil can have a heyday with you. Mm-hmm. I think one of the things that also makes me think is this can also be a two-way street with people. So people might not get a hold of you to go hang out or to do something, but if you don't get a hold of them, it can be just as much your fault. Mm-hmm. So, as far as the physical aspect of it is concerned, it's like, okay, well, get up off your butt and go do something. Mm-hmm. Realize that you have the power to go and do the things that you want to do without another person. Yeah. Another part of the physical aspect is that if people aren't inviting you to something, they may not know that you want to go. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And it may be awkward to be like, hey, haven't talked to you in a while,
what
but
you doing?
Or what are you guys up to? Well, we're doing this weekend. And it's like, well, mind if I tag along? Or it's, well, if you aren't busy, I'm doing this. Like, be the person that invites other people. Yeah. We had a friend group of people, and to be honest with you, there was a couple people in the friend group that were good facilitators about like making sure we all went and did stuff. Yeah. Because a lot of us would have just stayed at home and done nothing. Uh-huh. But they would contact our group of friends and be like, hey, we should go do this or we should go do that. Uh-huh. And because we were like, well, okay, what better thing do we have to do? Many of us would just be like, okay. And then we'd have fun. Mm-hmm. I think sometimes the thing that traps us too is we get lonely because we don't agree to do things. Like, because we feel like, I don't know if you get this way, I'm this type of person where sometimes it's difficult to overcome the want to go do something, knowing full well when I get there,
you're going to enjoy it.
I'm going to enjoy it. Yeah. But the getting there is the difficult part for me. Even though I have all of this evidence in my life where I didn't want to go because I wanted to sulk, but once I got there, I had fun. Mm-hmm. And it's just the getting over that hurdle sometimes. Yeah. and saying yes to the things that you're being asked. So sometimes you feel lonely, and people have tried to get you out of that.
Yeah.
And you've let your loneliness still be like, nobody cares about me. Well, what about the person that just messaged you, a day ago or whatever to go do this, and you said no to them?
Yeah.
You've let it also alter your thought process.
You just wanted to sit and sulk and feel bad for yourself. And I've been there. I've been that person that sits and feels bad for himself. At my worst, at my absolute worst, was when I did feel like nobody cares. And to be fair, some of those times, sometimes people don't. When you're at your lowest, sometimes people don't care, and that's where you have to rely on the Lord to pull you out of it. And sometimes that does require somebody else coming into your life. But there's definitely a large span of my life, I think, where there were people that cared and I didn't want to recognize it. And then I think there were definite times in my life where I really felt like, aside from your family that's there's definite times where I felt like I didn't have anybody, and you wonder why. And so then you have to rely on God to one, be your Lord in that situation, but then he also, in his kindness, sends people. But yeah, I think there are times that you do feel like you don't have anybody, and sometimes it's true, you don't, for whatever reason. Maybe they've all left. It's not always out of malice.
Yeah.
They're not there. They're just physically not there.
Yeah, I'm thinking about, like, if somebody coming out of high school is listening to this. Well, this person goes to Purdue, and that person went to Fort Wayne to college, and this person goes to Cincinnati or whatever, and all my friends have moved away, and I'm here doing this, or I've gone to state, or gone to Ivy Tech or whatever. And maybe sometimes it is true, like you don't actually the people that you used to have, you just don't have them anymore. Not of any fault of anybody's. I think that life took them that way and took you this way.
I think one of the hardest conversations I ever had with the Lord was that it's like, and this sounds funny, and it sounds kind of sad too, honestly, to say it out loud, but I remember being like, am I a loser? Because I don't have any friends right now. And it's not that I never have. It's not that, it's easy when you're in that moment to really think like, I've never had. That's not true. It's like that season of your life feels like it's your entire life. And it's not. It's just your present moment just feels so heavy that it feels like. But you could have been totally fine through all this time, and then all of a sudden you have this one season where all of a sudden you're isolated and you're alone, and it feels insurmountable. And so in those moments, and I'm like, would anybody even care if I wasn't here? Some people would miss me, is what I remember thinking. I remember thinking, well, they notice if I didn't show up and unlock the doors for this place, or they notice if I didn't show up to work, or my family would notice. But would anybody else care? They wouldn't. And so then you have to take that and be like, okay, now what? I can sit in that and feel bad for myself, or I can, approach the throne of grace about it and say, Lord, I am like at my end.
Yeah, I need help. You said that you got to a point where you were like, well, maybe I'm just a loser. That's one of the problems with loneliness from a spiritual aspect, is it makes you can make you critical of yourself. For me, it's because I'm too fat. It's because I'm ugly. It's because I'm, I'm all of these things that make me insufficient for other people. And that's why nobody wants to hang out with me. That's
what do other people think of me? Like, do they see me and say, he has no friends?
Yeah.
What's wrong with him?
Yeah, what's going on with that guy?
They don't see that you had 10 and they all moved away. They didn't see that you had this happen or that happen. But they see that you in that moment that you don't, and so you feel like you put that extra weight on yourself.
Yeah, it's just a projection, right? You just project what you think other people think, and then you put that on yourself, even though they probably don't think those things. You become, like I said, you become critical. You think, well, I'm just not enough for somebody, and so that's why. Or maybe you think I'm too much. The problem is that I'm too loud. I'm too awkward. When I get around people, I overshare. I try and be too funny. I
overcompensate for the fact that I'm around no one half the time.
maybe you think I'm too attractive, I don't know.
That's never been a problem for me, but yeah.
I don't know if people have
I
that.
can see that.
If people think that or not, but that's one of the problems is so loneliness. When it's like this way, it's like this with a lot of things. Is it just when you feed it, it grows, and the things that it thrives off of are things that just aren't good for you,
And I think in all of it, God knows your heart, and He knows who you need to have in your life and who He shouldn't be in your life. And in the moment, it's hard because you say, I don't have anybody. But in reality, it's God. One, I think, speaking for myself, in those seasons of loneliness, I still experience it.
Excuse me.
Not in the same way that I did. I mean, there were some really dark times, I felt like, and I wasn't good about sharing that. So there was a lot of times where, like, I remember my mom and my grandma would be like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, yeah, I guess. And they knew I wasn't okay.
Yeah.
Like, they knew I wasn't okay. But
like, I'm not this bad, but I'm also not good either.
Yeah.
That's what that's what happens is like when you're healthy enough mentally, you're not ever that bad, but when you're not healthy enough spiritually, mentally,
then like I wasn't ready to jump off
in the middle.
Yeah, I wasn't ready to jump off a bridge, but I had days where I just came home from work and just didn't want to get out of my bed. And so, like, they knew. But,
been there.
God will take those moments, and, I think for myself now, so I do have moments of loneliness, but I wouldn't say that I have, like, the deep season of loneliness.
Yeah.
But I will say that He has brought me closer to Him in that season of singleness, and I don't know that I would have been that way otherwise.
Yeah.
I think I would have been too distracted by everything else that's going on. And one thing about myself that I am keenly aware of is that I'm obsessive. Like, if there's something that I like, I really like it, and that goes across the board for anything. So if I am really into cars, then I'll be really into cars for a while, and if I'm really into this, I'll be really into it for a while, and I'll give up on it for a bit, and then I'll go back to it, and it might take 3 years, but then I'll go through 6 months of obsession with it, and sometimes I think the exact
same way.
Yeah, I think the Lord can use that for good in a lot of ways. Like, I feel like in ministry that's helpful, and I don't, only because you can kind of take that way that my brain works and, like, apply that to, like, like, for me, I want to do what God wants me to do. In the mornings on my way to work, one of my prayers is that, one, especially lately, that the Lord would help me to say the things that I need to say and not say the things that I shouldn't say, because there's been moments that when I'm not at work who I want to be everywhere else, and I know that it comes from a frustration. And so that's one thing, is just, like, help me mirror, like, who you want me to be and not who I actually am sometimes,
Yeah.
But then the other is just, like, how do you want to use me today? Because if I'm left to my own devices, then this obsessiveness will go somewhere else, and I would like to channel that into something that you want. Spin my wheels and
go nowhere.
Yeah. So, and there's a lot of days I feel like that sometimes. It's like I don't remember, I might have told you, I can't remember who it was the other day, that I said, I feel like I'm in a rut, but I'm running as hard as I can. I think it was my friend Kelly that I texted, and I said, I just feel like I'm running as hard as I can, but I'm just digging a hole. Mm-hmm. And it's unproductive work. It's unproductive, and it's frustrating. But I think you dig yourself that hole and you sit in it. Yeah. And there's your loneliness, right? Yeah. And sometimes you need other people to pull you up out of the hole and pull you a little further, and then you're going again. Yeah. It reminds me of those cars you pull back and, like.
Oh yeah. Where you pull the car backwards.
Yeah.
And
you need somebody sometimes to kind of pull you back and, like, help you reevaluate, and then they'll let you loose, and then you can go and you're, like, looking right. But
I think what we've described is this idea that your perception is what you feel like your reality is. So where your eyes are, that's what it's gonna be. Yeah. Turning this to what we can do about it spiritually. So we talked about, like, just get up and go. Yeah. we've discussed. Keeping your hands busy. If you're going to do something, ask the Lord, like, what do you want me to do? Help keep me busy for you, if that's, that's what this takes. From a spiritual aspect, what we need to understand is that we don't have to feel lonely because we're not alone. The Bible says that God never leaves us or forsakes us. I love this. I looked up Psalms 139. This is David speaking, and he says in verse 7, "Where can I go from your spirit, or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to the heavens, you are there. If I make my bed in hell, beyond, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the outermost parts of the sea, even your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me. If I say, surely the darkness shall fall over me, even the night shall be a light about me. Indeed, the darkness shall not hide from you, but the night shines as the day. The darkness and the light are both alike to you. For you formed my inward parts. You covered me in my mother's womb. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous are your works, and that my soul knows very well." And then he talks about, my frame was not hidden from you when I was made in the secret place. Like, God has known every person from the beginning of time.
Yeah. And
he knew when they would be conceived. He knew when they would grow. He knew what they were going to be like when they came out.
Yeah.
You as a believer, you have the Spirit of God, and there's no place that the Spirit of God does not go with you. There's no place. There's a lot of song, or there's a lot of hymns that I think are great about defeating loneliness. And He walks with me, and He talks with me. Yeah. We mentioned a couple podcasts ago, turn your eyes upon Jesus, look full in His wonderful face. The other thing that you have to remember is that this is common to man, right? Yeah. Like, you feel like, well, I'm the only one experiencing this, but you're not. Like, people experience loneliness all of the time. What's interesting is sometimes you can have two people that know each other experiencing loneliness, and they just haven't, it just hasn't clicked. Yeah. That, I think when I first got to this church, that's one of the things that allowed us to, kind of kick it off, so to speak, is like, hey, I want to do this podcast. You were like, yeah, I'll do it. Yeah. It's like, I don't have anything to do. Yeah. I don't know anybody in this town. Yeah. All my friends are married. They all have kids. Like, I think it was one of the things that was like, we're either I can sit at home and be lonely and do nothing,
and I can sit at home and be lonely and do nothing,
or we can realize we have a mutual interest in this church to. Talk about things that we think are relevant.
And that came at the craziest time for me. And it's one of the things that, as if God doesn't show me enough, that He answers prayers. Your dad had been preaching here for a year. I can't even remember. I should know this by now, but he'd been preaching here. And I really, that has sort of helped pull me out of this depression that I was sort of in. I want to go as far as to say depression, but on the cusp of it, certainly. Like, if it had gone any further, I would have been in the trenches. I really believe that. And I just remember, like, that was one of the prayers that I had, and feeling like so lonely. Like, okay, I feel like I'm getting grounded in the Word. I feel like I'm getting grounded in what needs to happen, and I see things happening in the church, and I see things happening in my life, but I also feel like I'm missing something, and I feel so lonely. And I think probably the most realist prayer that I'd ever had. I mean, and I don't want that to sound like I never prayed or was serious about prayer, because that's not true. But I think if I was being honest with myself, the most deep, honest, through tears prayer was just like, I feel like you've kept me here, but I don't understand it, because I have all these people that I love, but there's no one. I just feel like I'm floundering, and we're going through all this stuff as a church that is really, even though it feels heavy to some, I guess if you were looking on it from the outside in, it felt really heavy, but on the inside in, I felt like it was an awakening. So it was, to me, I was excited about it. and it didn't feel insurmountable. It felt like the Lord is taking us where we need to go. So I was like, ready to strap on the jetpack and go. But for myself personally, I feel so alone in this. And I just remember laying there in bed, like I just like literally. I know it sounds like I like cry all the time, but I literally was laying in bed. But it's just, I was literally laying in bed through tears, just like, Lord, the thing that feels insurmountable right now is that we need a pastor. Everything else has fallen into place, and it's not that I don't think you can do it, but that just feels like the holdup at the moment.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that I just feel so alone, and I don't know why I'm here. And I really need a friend that's going to not just walk with me with Jesus, because that's important, very important to me, especially with this newfound like fervor that I have at that time. But also just somebody to talk to. I have nobody else to even talk to here, and I didn't even think about it again after that,
Yeah.
And then later on, I go back and I look at that, and I'm like, that is the one thing that. When I go to the grave, I'm going to go knowing that like God hears prayers, and that was a turning point in my life in that moment. And I didn't know it. But however many months after that, then it's so obvious. It was like,
it's like God answered the prayer twofold, used the same person to be both.
Yeah. And that's so profound to me. And I've talked about that in different instances, like on the podcast and different things. But like I go back and think about that a lot, and I'm like, that's just one of the many ways that I think God has shown me like who he is to me, is that I've seen that happen.
Yeah. I think
at the right time.
Yeah. I think the most important thing that a person can do, not only just the idea of getting up and moving, but from a spiritual aspect, the most important thing, and I think it's one of the things you're describing as like, seek the Lord, right? Take all that energy that you feel being lonely and channel that into seeking the Lord, seeking his will for your life. What's the word? Like letting the idea that you are not alone because you have Christ just wash over you. Just the idea that you have been given the Holy Spirit. You're a son or a daughter of God. Like the perception that you are too much for somebody or not enough for somebody or you don't have any friends. Those are what we have to realize is all of those things are so temporary in the grand scheme of things. Like we'll spend eternity with the one who created us. Yeah. Like we'll spend eternity with the God who made us. That's the number one relationship that has to matter. Yeah. Because I hate to be this way, but the friends you have on this earth, you may not see in heaven. Yeah. Hopefully. There's scripture that lends itself that we're not even married in heaven. So it's like, well, that's kind of depressing.
Yeah, your best friend and you don't know.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the day, like you're going to have God for eternity. Yeah. And I think that he has, there's this idea that God has written eternity on the hearts of people. There's this idea that we should understand we can't live without him. We can't live on this earth without him. We can't live in eternity without him. And he, the creator of the universe, wants a personal relationship with each and every one of us. So at the end of the day, though you may feel like, well, I don't have this connection with these people, or I don't have a person, or whatever, you can allow the idea that you have God to rescue you from every one of those moments. Yeah, I promise you that, because that's the only thing that has brought me out of some of the funks I've been in, is just seeking the face of God. Just, you know what? I can either do this the wrong way and throw a pity party for myself, or I can do it the correct way and I can just seek whatever he wants for me. And then just saying yes to all the things that he asks you to do.
Like to do a podcast when that's not
exactly
that's not at all anything that you would have ever done.
But the idea is that before you know it, you're at the place where God wants you to be. He doesn't want you to sit at home alone, lonely. He doesn't want you to lay in bed for long periods of time lonely. He doesn't want you to sit in the dark and eat ice cream and be lonely. He wants you to realize that he has a plan for your life. And once you start realizing that, that's where you start to say, I can put this behind me.
Yeah.
Because I'm on a trajectory of what the Lord wants for my life. And once you start feeling like that's a productive thing to be doing, because loneliness can rob your productivity for sure, then you go, you know what? If I have this, this is, well, I was singing that song, if I got Jesus, I got all that I could ever need. But that's true, truly and wonderfully. If the only thing that God ever gave us was Christ, it's all that we need is Him. Everything has to flow out of that idea, because I would have picked the wrong person to marry. Before I started thinking about, I'm just going to fix my eyes on Christ and I'm going to start listening. And the Lord showed me that I should ask my wife out. And we had been in the same friend group for years of people. And I've told her this, I overlooked her. And it wasn't until the Lord gave me the eyes to see. But I wasn't going to be able to see that until I started on the path that He needed me to go down. And I could still be stuck in my loneliness doing nothing. But instead, I'm like, I'm going to start seeking what the Lord wants for my life. And I actually, at some point, accepted that if I never have a spouse, I'm going to be fine. And it's like once I accepted that, I was able to live a way healthier life.
That was part of that prayer that that night that I prayed was, I come from a single parent household and I desired to be married for a very long time. Like I always wanted to be able to be married and have kids and at 31 years old, I don't have that. But I remember in that prayer being like, Lord, if this is, not only am I lonely, but I don't see these things happening at least in the foreseeable future. And so it was like, if I can't have that, like give me somebody to at least, be friends with, like, because I just can't, I just feel so lonely in this moment. And I know that they're not going to solve my problems, right? You can't put all your weight on somebody that's not Jesus. Because He's the only one that can take that. So it's like you're not looking for somebody to dump it all on. You're just looking at somebody to help pick you up when you're down, to be a good friend, to do all these things. And so that was a prayer. And so 6 months later, or however long it is, it's like if I hadn't said yes, which is, again, totally out of character for me, if I hadn't said yes to that, to you asking, will you do this podcast, then what happens? Because then I probably would have still been at home feeling bad about myself and feeling this or that or whatever, and it just opens the doors to all these different things,
When you look at it well, that doesn't solve this or this problem, but at least it's, at least it gets me on the right track. And part of following the Lord, I shouldn't even say part. Following the Lord looks like not knowing where you're headed. Most of the time. But it's just saying yes to the next thing, and then the next thing leads you to the next thing, and I've seen that happen in my life, time after time after time again. In spite of other things going on in my life, how he's just been like, just say yes, just keep moving forward.
For me, even it's not just even about it's the saying yes, and it just lead to having a friendship. It led to doing more in the church. It led to having more ministry opportunity. It led to things that I can do that I didn't realize I could do. It leads to having in just an insane number of things that I never would have saw myself in, and it was only because the Lord led me to say yes. And I don't know where I would be if I hadn't said yes. I mean, God will do what He wants to do with you, no matter what. If you decide to do something dumb, He'll find another way. But how much easier is it whenever you do what He's called you to do?
I think, I mentioned earlier that we can't speak to every aspect of loneliness. We've talked about feeling like you don't have any friends, talked about feeling like you don't have a companion, not having a wife or, if you're a woman, not having a husband or a boyfriend or whatever. There's areas that we can't speak to, as of right now, we don't know the parent that's sending their kid off to college that now they're empty nesters. And it's like, well, for the last 18 years, I've heard these footsteps. I've not had any food because they've eaten it all. We can't speak to that. But at the same time, we've been around people that have certainly gone through those aspects of life. The solution's the same. Like, seek the Lord. Yeah. What's the net? Like, if this is no longer who I am, if my child no longer needs me to the same capacity that they needed me before, what do I need to do now, Lord? Because that's what allows people to transition through these seasons is when you've encountered something like this, it's like, well, they may not need me as much as they needed me before. Like, there was a time in our lives where our parents dressed us. Yeah. There was a time in our life when they wiped us. There was a time in our lives when they fed us and they held us and they carried us. And that was the only way for us to get from point A to point B. And then we started walking, but then you reach to a point where it's like, well, now they're away or now they have their own job and they don't need, or they're out with their friends. And it's like, you can allow, again, it's like you, as an adult now in your 40s or 30s or whatever it is, it's like you're back in high school going, well, I don't have anybody. It's the same loneliness just playing itself over in a different, later on down the line. Because, the truth is that you can't outrun loneliness. I feel like it's kind of almost always an option. But what you can do is say, well, if you're that parent right now and you're listening to this, you can say, well, how do I help now? How do I help them now? Because I'm not going to carry them any longer. I'm not going to, I may not even be feeding them any longer. I'm not going to be I'm definitely not going to see them as much as I used to. What do I need to do now, Lord? And for many people, God has given them not something to replace. Nothing will ever replace the time that you have with their children, but giving them something to say, you know what, you can now put your energy into this. You can now put your energy into that. You could open up a bakery. But you got to be open to the leading of the Lord and understand that, that life doesn't go exactly how we want it ever. And the other thing I think about that we can't speak to, and listen, if you're like somebody in these groups of categories and you want to come on and talk to us, we would if
we're all ears.
If you've listened for the last hour and 10 minutes and you're like, I feel like I could talk about that, then by all means. The other thing I think about is like, what if you've lost your spouse? You're retired, you used to just spend time with him. Your kids have been gone. You've accepted that. You're no longer, now you're a grandpa or grandma or and that life is totally different than mom and dad for sure. But now your spouse is gone and it's like, that's something we can't speak to. But the thing I think about is the answer is the same. Seek the Lord. And I know that's not like, it doesn't even feel helpful sometimes to say, well, you just need to seek the Lord. But I don't mean it by like, I guess I don't mean it the throwaway way that every Christian means it. I mean like, in order for you to find purpose in this life, which I think is one of the things that can help combat the loneliness, is to say, Lord, now that this is where I'm at, I can't go back, or this person's not coming back. What does my life look like now? Help me see what my life looks like now that I'm in this stage.
Well, like God knows what you need, right? So like even for us, like when we became friends, like you were single and I was single and we're close in age, and we were sort of like, even though I'd been here my entire life and you were just coming into the church, like we were both sort of in a similar like spot, I guess you would say, And then in that time I've seen, I've seen dating to engaged to married to a baby.
On the way. Yeah.
And so, I mean, I can say that, oh, well, that season's over. I could say that, I guess. And but thankfully,
you could get cynical about it if you want.
I could get cynical if I wanted
Yeah.
to. I could be a jerk.
Yeah.
But in reality, what it is because it's something that God has ordained, because it's something that God is. We've become.
Well, and I'll mention, you're perfectly capable of doing this alone. I mean, you edit everything.
Yeah. I don't want to.
But no, I know you're not. And
Yeah.
I'm not even suggesting that.
Yeah.
I just mean, like, you could be like, well, if he can't pot, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah. But I think in God's grace, what he did was before any of that ever even happened, we became brothers. And so then we have this ministry that's the thread that runs through us. So it doesn't matter what my life circumstances are. It doesn't matter what your life circumstances are. Like we've got that
sit at this table.
We've got that Christ thread that's running right through the middle, and it doesn't matter,
Yeah.
And I think that happens also with other people's lives, whatever situation you find yourself in. If it's something that you've prayed about and then the Lord delivers that, God wouldn't have been mean and said, like, hey, I'm going to give this to you for a season. I'm going to yank it away and make you feel miserable. That's not how God works. That's not how he is. He gives good gifts to his children, and he's loving.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't always feel that way, but
I
think for the spouse that's lost their husband, they will, if you go to the Lord and seek that, he will provide another avenue for you to turn to. That doesn't mean that pain from losing your spouse is going to go away. No. It probably won't ever go away.
Or that you love them less.
Right.
If you move on to, maybe you have, I've seen plenty of older people get together. Maybe they don't get married, or, it's not, they're not doing some of the other stuff that married people do, but, to have that companion, or even just to say, you know what, I would never have done this before, but I'm going to go to a sewing group, or I think that the biggest thing, and I think what I've discovered as we've kind of looped around here and kind of mulled this over, sometimes that's what these podcasts are, is just talking enough to where you think, oh, you know what, what this is really is no matter where you are in life, evaluating whether or not God wants you to be there or stay there is one of the biggest things you can do.
Yeah. Because
you're going to come into all aspects of life at some point, whether you're, and some of this stuff you're not going to understand if you're 5, right? But maybe you're 13 and you go, I'm lonely. Well, that loneliness, when you're 18, you're still going to be lonely. When you're 30 and your kid moves off, or you lose your spouse, or you lose a friend, or like, loneliness is universal. What you can do about it, though, is to decide whether or not you're going to stay there and say, you know what, Lord, and I think really what it is what does my life look like now that I'm here? That's what you need to ask the Lord. The understanding is a big prayer for loneliness. It's like, Lord, help me to understand. Yeah. Why am I at you said that earlier. Why am I here? Why am I at this point? Yeah. You can spin your wheels and go nowhere, or you can ask yourself, what's hanging me up? Right?
What are your plans that you have for me that I haven't been willing to listen to?
If you have ever been like off-roading at all, like, or you've ever purposely been off-roading or non-purposely, like you accidentally ran off in a ditch or something. When you get stuck and you start spinning your wheels, I think that's where this terminology comes from. And, you're slinging mud and you're slinging grass and you're like, what is going on? The wise decision is to never just hit the gas
keep hitting the
and
accelerator
just keep burying yourself.
Yeah.
You get out and you see what's hanging you up. You go, oh, well, here's the problem, is that the car is dragging on the frame. Because what you might need to see is, I need to back up. Or I've run into something that's keeping me from going forward, so I need to back up. Yeah. And
maybe I need to call a buddy and have him come with the shovel or the backhoe or whatever else.
There's no way out of this except for to ask for help, And I say all of that as a metaphorically to say that no matter where you're at in life, if you're experiencing loneliness, number one, like God doesn't want you to be that. It's not God that's allowing you to feel that.
Yeah.
Number two is there are certain times in life when it's of your own. It's not of your own fault. Like I say, people move away, people pass away.
Yeah.
If you were ever lonely because you're a single child, well, that's not something you can help. Your parents just never had, more children.
Yeah.
All of these conditions can allow you to experience loneliness. All of them have the same solution, in my opinion, and that's seek the face of God.
Yeah.
Ask for clarity. Ask for understanding. Ask what do I need to accept? Right? What am I not accepting that I need to accept?
Yeah. Because
I might be stuck in my ways. I might not like this stage of my life, but what am I going to do?
Yeah.
And then just ask what you need to do. Like, Lord, what do I need to do? And sometimes it's just that physical aspect of getting up and getting going. Sometimes it's a spiritual thing. Like, I don't know, don't lay in bed in the dark. Go in the other room and get your Bible. Sit at the kitchen table, open that. Let the Lord lead you. Worship can bring you out of a funk time after time after time. I can't believe we haven't mentioned worship.
I know
this entire time. But just praising the Lord, and even just pondering on His goodness.
Yeah.
I remember a couple nights ago, I woke up, I wasn't feeling great, and I get these times where I just feel like I'm gonna die. It's partly to do with the things that's going on with my neck, probably partly to do with things that's going on with my stomach. Like, that's never actually been like fully fixed. It's like just partly the idea that something great is about to happen in my life, that I'm going to have this child, and now I'm going to die and leave my wife and child behind. That's probably I know every man has probably had that thought. Like, I've got everything I want, and now it's going to be taken away, or I'm going to be taken away, or whatever. And I just, what I did was I just started recalling, just saying all the things I know about God.
Yeah.
That He's hung every star in the sky, and He knows He's named every one of them. That He has created the sea and the air and the plants and and it sounds funny, I guess, to be like, well, you just recalled the creation story. It's like, yeah, well, that was part of it for sure. But then, like, thinking about just exclaiming all the things He's done in my own life, who He is just in general, and these ideas of like, where can I go that you're not there? And so whatever and I think this is where the conclusion comes, is like, the reason I don't have to feel lonely is that if I'm here and you've brought me here, then you've brought me here alone for a reason. Like, as far as from a companion standpoint, I'm here in this time, and you haven't provided a friend. You haven't provided because maybe I'm supposed to be alone in this part of my life. Sometimes that's a conclusion. I think sometimes the conclusion is that sometimes it's probably just not going to change for a while.
There's no guarantee that you're going to have, like, and I remember when I texted you this, because at the time I was like, are you sure? Because it feels kind of weird. But I remember that I wake up a lot at 3 a.m. and have those, and we've talked about this before on the pod, but I had that 3 a.m. where I woke up and I wasn't even thinking about this. I was going through the course of my day on just all the things that had gone wrong. Like, the day at work was just dumb. You have those days at work where you're like, this is dumb. I hate this place. It's just crazy. And then I had other stuff going on, and I remember just going through this laundry list where I was telling the Lord, like, I don't like this. I'm mad about this. I don't like this. You name it. I was letting Him have it. And I can honestly say I was a little irritated with Him when I went to bed, because I thought, why?
Yeah.
And then I remember the very last thing I was thinking, now my buddy's got this other stuff, and so he's not going to have time to do anything. And so here I am at square one again. And that was honestly the only time I've ever thought that. But I think it was just because it was tacked onto the end of just a really hard day. Yeah. And I went to bed, and I fell asleep almost immediately, probably because I was mad, and I would just shut it out. And I remember waking up at 3:30, somewhere in there, and I remember the Lord. This is the only time in my life that I've ever just, like, in my mind, like, audibly heard him say, like, you need to, basically, I wrote it down because part of what he said was, like, write this down. And so I was like, what? And he said it again, so I, like blindly, like, grabbing my phone, trying to, like, type it out. But the gist of it was, like, this is a brother that I sent for you. Stop worrying about it. Like,
Yeah.
you're friends for life. Don't worry about it. And I'm like, what are you, I'm half awake. Like, what are you talking about? But I, like, jolted awake. And so I heard that, and I'm like, I was like, I'm gonna text him that, but I'm like, it feels kind of weird. But I'm like,
Yeah.
whatever. But then later, the more I've thought about it, I'm like, that's so profound to me, because, like, I already felt like that because it was the answered prayer. And then the one time that I get, like, just feeling bad about myself, it was, like, just in the kindness of God, I guess, to reassure me, to be like, hey, like, stop worrying. Like, it's fine.
Yeah.
I got you, you know? And I've not ever worried about it since. But it was just such a profound thing. But again, it's like God's not going to put you in situations where you just to make you feel isolated or lonely.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to think, like, it'll be easy. Sometimes it's easy to get mad at God and say, why are you putting me in this situation? But again, you're not. And then just to go back to, like, this podcast, you know, I think this particular episode, we've kind of gone in different directions, and it's kind of been over the place. But I think that's one of the great things about the podcast, is we said from the beginning that if nobody ever listened, it was good for us, because it's almost like we workshop things and we talk things through in a lot of ways. And this is just sort of an insight on what, like, a conversation would be that we're having, you know. And so hopefully you get something out of it.
Well, and I think sometimes just the value of and I think that's a podcast in general, is like listening to other people process the same thing that you probably need to process or have had to process at some point. So I think this podcast probably resonates with a lot of people. And like I said, if you're like, hey, I've got something to add, or you know, I think that, you know, by all means, get a hold of us. If you know, it wouldn't be without making sure it's you know,
appropriate,
going to be appropriate or biblically valuable. But we'd be happy to sit down with anybody that we think that's like, hey, you know, I'm in this season, and here's what I'm doing.
You can comment on all of our platforms. You can send us emails at ccfirstchurchpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
We're on Instagram.
Send us on message on Instagram.
We are everywhere. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Spotify, Apple Podcasts.
You can comment under
YouTube.
The podcast on Spotify. The only one we probably don't check as often, you might, is the SoundCloud comments.
Yeah, I don't check it quite as often, but I do get notifications, so I will pop in there and look. So
yeah, absolutely.
Hit us up.
Well, as always, I guess, you know, we're speaking to First Church, but this could be really anybody that's listening. We love you guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.
We'll see ya.